How we doing, people? Welcome back to Life with Football. Kyle Smith, Platform Sports League. We got a great episode, a great story. My guest, Brad Niemeier, is a former walk-on defensive lineman at Purdue and basically grew into and transitioned into the founder of Azzip Pizza, a great Midwestern, different style pizza chain, if you will. And Purdue is connected and football is connected all into his business ventures, which is really cool. He's got a great story. He's one of the guests that I thought of immediately, and I told him this when I created this podcast in my mind, as far as telling stories like his, right? Utilizing Purdue, utilizing football and transferring those skills and what he learned and how he grew into his professional life. So Brad was a student at Purdue, the Krannert School of Business, wins a business contest and receives, almost startup money in a way, for his pizza chain, for his pizza, idea, I guess, if you will. And I'll obviously let him tell you about that. But just a really cool story in the transfer from sports and football into the business life. He is growing around the Midwest with his pizza chain, and it's just really cool to see his success and follow his journey. And so listen, I appreciate you guys tuning in. We're going to get right to it. Brad Niemeier, Life with Football. Stay tuned.
I haven't caught any episodes yet, but I've seen a couple times. Have you done a few interviews and podcasts in the history?
Yep, they're fun. I mean, it just kind of allows you to, like, if they're 45 minutes long, it's a lot longer than most interviews kind of are. So you can kind of expand on things and just talk through things a little more, and they're a lot of fun.
Right. That's what I love, man. And like I said, when I was texting you, I was like, I truly had you in mind as like the stories that I kind of wanted to go through, you know what I mean? The football experience and then moving that into real life and kind of getting into all that. But So Brad Niemeier, man, welcome to the podcast, Life with Football.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Excited. Awesome. Give us an idea, basically my first question always is kind of a quick introduction, who you are, the elevator speech kind of, and then we'll get into kind of comic book number one, kind of chapter one on your background. So,
yeah, I'm Brad Niemeier, former walk-on defensive tackle at Purdue. Played at Purdue for 4 years from 2008 to 2012. After that, my senior year, I entered a business plan competition with an idea for a pizza company. So I'm sure we'll get into more of that later, but started that right out of college, and have grown that now to 10 locations, called Azzip Pizza. And so that's been my pursuit the last 8 years or so since college has been over. I've got 2 kids, 2 boys, 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old, and an almost 2-year-old. So Sam and Gideon. So life is full right now. There's a lot going on.
So starting off real quick, what kind of kid were you growing up? Just revolving around sports, I guess, but just in general.
Yeah, I think I was a lot like my oldest son, Sam. So he is a wild one, into every sport, loves throwing the ball, loves wrestling around, loves doing all that stuff. And I think I was a lot like him. Probably didn't listen as well as my parents would have liked. I had an older brother as well. And so, definitely was getting beat up on by him, but, learned to take it and learned to, bide my time and get my shots in when I could. So
no doubt. How much older than you was your brother?
He was only 15 months older than me. So
wow.
I quickly surpassed him in size, but that didn't mean, he's still older brother. And so he always is a little craftier than I was.
No doubt. Mine's 2 years basically, but we can get into that too, because I don't know. I feel like the value of an older brother, especially as an athlete and growing up, and just the competition is just unmatched in my opinion. But
and I think especially not just like him, but his friends. I mean, we would always be doing, pickup games, basketball, throwing the football, and you're just constantly competing against older kids. Right. And so when you have an older sibling, I think that definitely helps.
Absolutely. You, and this is why I like my podcast too, because I get to ask selfish questions. So my son is 3, and I'm trying to interject the sport slowly, obviously not be overbearing, but it's like back to the dinosaurs and back to the other stuff like immediately. So what age, like, how does that happen? You know what I mean? You said your son's into sports, and how did that work for you guys?
So with my oldest one, he was into sports just from day one, it seemed like. I mean, when he was 1.5 or so, he was already throwing stuff. I mean, you just tell he would just, launch his passy, launch his toy, whatever he had. We'd be in church and he'd throw a passy 3 rows up. He was he's just always been throwing things. So that, I think, came pretty naturally to him. My younger one, Gideon, it doesn't seem to be taken to it as much, and you never know, that might change as they grow up. But from the get-go, Sam was just all into it. And so this year he got his first year t-ball. All the stereotypes of kids playing in the dirt and all that stuff is all 100% true.
Awesome. I can't wait for that stuff, no doubt. So let's fast forward a little bit, because there's a lot in teenage and young 20 life that I want to get into. But so let's fast forward to high school. So modern day. What? And I didn't know, I thought obviously Evansville area. I didn't know, I don't know much about the area. So give me an idea. So modern day is a 2A school, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the smallest high school in modern day that's in the SIAC. So you were always playing the bigger schools all year long. And so that's usually a big advantage once you get to the playoffs. And so we play Wrights, and Central always has a good team, and Castle, and there's a lot of good athletes and good teams down here. So we get, we hold our own, but take our lumps during the season.
Sure.
But then we're always really prepared to go out and play all the other 2A schools.
That makes sense. So give me a little idea of football culture, or in that town there, kind of, as a freshman, just growing up through high school. What was that like for you guys?
Yeah, so I grew up in it's pretty cool, because I grew up watching kind of 2 offenses that were very similar, in Purdue's offense at the time with Breeze and those guys who threw it around a ton, and Mater Dei took a lot from that, I think. And they were running a lot of the same plays that Purdue was running at the time. So we had 2 brothers that were back-to-back, probably for 6 years in a row. We had the Schiff brothers at quarterback, and they set all kinds of state records for passing. And we're just a ton of fun to watch, and really, I think, helped get me into football and get me excited about it. I mean, those Friday nights were some awesome games to go watch. There were some classics there between Mater Dei and our West Side rival Wrights. The bowl there is huge, and they pack it in for those Mater Dei Wrights games. They're a ton of fun.
I gotta check one out down there.
They're awesome. Yeah.
That would be cool. Cool. So when did you start playing football, I guess, like organized football?
Yeah. I started playing in, I think, EGFL, Evansville Junior Football League, starts in the 2nd grade here. So that was my introduction. I remember playing right from the start. I think I sat 1 year out whenever I was still coming up through the ranks. I think I was in 6th or 7th grade and played fall ball 1 year. And that was about the only time I didn't play football.
Awesome. Okay. When did you get your first varsity rep or on varsity?
Yeah. So every year, the freshman team, they usually pull up 1 or 2 guys to dress for the playoffs. Okay. And so luckily I was one of those guys who got pulled up. And so I've always said this, the first time you see a game from the sidelines at the next level up from where you're at, is just an incredible experience. It is just the speed, the size, it's just seeing that next level it's just always incredible. And so I'll always remember that playoff game and watching that. And so I obviously didn't play in that game, but then I ended up starting my first game my sophomore year at center. And that was down in Owensboro. I mean, it's an adjustment getting used to the speed. I mean, it just is completely different every time you step up a level.
No doubt. That's a good point too. Anytime for your first time on that sideline, regardless of that level, it's a new world for sure.
Yeah. So I've always wanted to watch an NFL game from the sideline for that reason, because I've never seen one, and I just can't imagine how they must be just flying around.
No doubt. And sometimes you forget, we were in the, Purdue world and the Big Ten world, and you kind of get used to it. And then I come back, years later, and you're on the sideline. You forget, literally how big these dudes are and fast and how crazy things are. So cool. So you were a 3-year starter then?
Yep. I started 3 years at center, and then 2 years on the defensive line as well. So that was junior and senior year, started defensive
Both
tackle.
ways. I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to do my research. 2-time All-State, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nice, man.
Yep.
And so how long did you wrestle for? What about wrestling?
So wrestling was like the complete opposite for me. So Mater Dei is a huge wrestling school. We won like 7 titles in a row back in the 2000s. Had a 4-time state champion, Blake Maurer, just some incredible wrestlers that went through. And so I grew up watching it, but not necessarily wrestling. Wrestled for a couple of years in grade school, but never really took to it. And then whenever I stopped growing height-wise, I realized I wasn't going to play basketball. So
Sure.
I ended up switching over from basketball after my freshman year to sophomore year wrestling.
Got it.
And that's a sport that is about as intense as it gets.
Shoot.
You better be in shape to wrestle. That's for sure.
Right. I have nothing but the utmost respect for wrestlers. And honestly, I witnessed it through high school. I think I was too soft for wrestling from day one. That's the truth. But witnessing from high school, but when I got to Purdue, and you see these wrestling guys, man, it's Big Ten wrestling. Unreal, the work they go through.
Yep.
I know the work that football players go through, man, but it's unmatched for sure on the wrestling side. So, for that kind of attitude wise and really give me an idea of what it did for you as far as that combo with sports.
There are so many benefits to wrestling. Especially for alignment. It is all hand fighting. It's all, getting used to being out of position and, body control. And, it is a great tool for defense or offensive linemen. It is just, you can't beat that kind of training in the off season.
Right. There's no doubt. I bet. Okay. So we move into, obviously, a big piece for me is just to kind of go through some stories with the recruiting world or how high school to college happened. So when was the first time that I guess college football was a reality for you in your head? Like, did you always know that was going to happen, or when did it pop up for you? Yeah.
So I actually, when I got done, I didn't really get recruited hardly at all out of high school.
Sure.
A couple small Division III kind of opportunities, but I'd always wanted to go to Purdue. Came from a Purdue family. Right. Both mom and dad went to Purdue. My older brother was at Purdue at the time, and that was just where I was going to go. And so I went up there originally just to be a student. I don't even know. My high school coach may have sent my, film along for them, just as a courtesy kind of thing to try to get a walk-on spot. But really it wasn't even on the radar that much. And then I got up there and decided I had found out about when the tryout was actually going to be, and, thought, okay, I'll just do it once and see if, anything crazy happens, that kind of thing.
How'd you find out? Like, how'd you find out that tryout?
I think I probably looked it. I think I probably Googled it.
Sure.
I don't remember exactly who, told me, but I kind of I'd always known there's just generally tryouts for that. Right. And so I think I probably just Googled it and found the date and signed up, or however it worked. I don't really even remember.
So what year was this?
This would have been the 2008, 2009 season. Okay.
So that was Tiller's last year.
Last year. Yep.
Okay.
And so I did the sign-up process, the application process. Always helps us if you have a good GPA going into it. So luckily had that on my side. I also had the wrestling experience and was able to put down some of the team accolades and individual accolades had in that, which I'm sure never hurts anything. And I had actually put down that I was going to try out for center because I always thought that was my better position.
Sure.
And so went out that day and, there was, 50, 100 kids out there. I don't really know. Right. And they put you through some drills and, you're doing some stuff and, you're looking around and like, I felt like, okay, at least I'm like fairly coordinated compared to some of the other ones out here and, that kind of thing. Sure. And so I'm like, okay, you never know, but I didn't think much of it. And they kind of huddle everybody up like, hey, we'll let you guys know. And, we'll get back with you in the next week or so. Right. And I'm walking off the field and Joel Thomas pulled me aside. He was the walk-on coordinator at the time. He's now the running back coach for the Saints, I believe.
Yep, absolutely.
And he stopped me and he said, hey, I know you tried out for offensive line, but like we need some bodies for defensive line. Would you be willing to do that? And I was like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Whatever, whatever you need, I'd be happy to. And so literally left the field that day knowing that they were going to let me on the team as a walk-on defensive line. And so it was just that awesome feeling. I mean, to grow up a Purdue fan your entire life and love Purdue and not really thinking I had a shot at, having that opportunity ever.
Right.
It was a really cool thing. And I remember calling Dad on the way home because he's always, a huge Purdue fan and just being kind of just ecstatic to tell him that I already found out that I was going to make the team. So it was really, really cool.
That's so cool. And literally that was going to be my question. If you remembered like calling your family and stuff like that. So that's so cool.
It was amazing.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. So, that's your freshman year. I mean, you went the whole time, the whole career there. So, and to illustrate this, I think this is important too. So I get a lot of questions and I talk with a lot of kids that, that might be juggling the idea of walking on at a school like Purdue or a Big Ten university or, a huge football program, or taking an opportunity at a Division III school or a smaller university and really getting in there or being a bigger role player, I guess you could say. You already had it figured out that you were going to Purdue as far as the education goes, and that was the plan. But what do you think as far as somebody trying to make that decision, coming from someone from your experience? I mean, just give me a little idea about the walk-on experience versus going to a smaller school and being the guy there,
Yeah, I think it's really tough. And I think it comes down to each person, what they want to do and how they want to, be a part of the program. For me, I think all high school kids that end up on, whether that be Division I or Division III schools, they were kind of one of the guys at their high school. They were one of the studs at their high school, and they're used to that. And so going to that walk-on position, I mean, it is a big change from what you were used to in high school. That's just no doubt about that. One, you're going back to just being a freshman, but two, I mean, a lot of times you're, there's a reason you didn't maybe get, recruited at that position. And so it's an uphill battle to say the least. So I think that there's a ton of benefits to that. And I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about that more of just like, being the underdog, like learning to scrap and work for everything you get. And, there's a ton of benefits and a ton of things you learn and take that with you from that throughout the rest of your life. But I think it's a really unique opportunity to be able to be in that kind of position, just learn how to contribute in any way you can. I was never going to really make a meaningful contribution on the field. But I think I did help in a lot of other ways, just being somebody that was a good teammate in the locker room, that worked hard in practice and, got people good quality reps and things like that, just learning to be a part of a team, especially if you've come from high school where, you were the guy and, you've had that side of things. It's awesome to be able to see the other side of things and learn that role as well.
Sure. That's huge. That's huge. What, and that too, I think it takes, like you said, I mean, it takes some humility, right? Because you're showing up where you're the guy at your school and you're at the bottom of the totem pole at this point. So freshman, I mean, and you said it the right way. Coach Thomas mentioned, hey, we need bodies. And literally, I mean, I lived that life too. It's like, that's what you are, is a body. And, you got to be able to take instruction and be productive in what you're doing. And so that's important to have that attitude, to be able to soak that in and play that role, right?
Yep. Every team needs that. And I really think there is value in that role. I mean, giving those starters reps, and there's a chance down the road that you're going to get your opportunity too. Sure. And I mean, you live that to a T, sure. But I mean, that just wasn't my my role to play. And I not to say I didn't work for it or I didn't put the effort forward, but it just wasn't my role to play. And so I enjoyed my time there. I mean, just the friendships you make are just incredible. Just being able to be immersed in that kind of atmosphere from people of all kinds of different backgrounds, from all over the country, and just be in one locker room and just kind of come together as a team is an incredible place to be.
No doubt. And you don't understand that experience with those relationships until you're done. You know what I mean? I think in the professional world and grown up world, like now you're connecting with these guys in different cities. So I agree. Give everybody an idea about the D-line room. I mean, some of the guys that you played with and saw come through those years, that has to be crazy.
It is. I mean, there was a starting D line where they were all in the NFL at one time. I mean, it just was a packed room full of studs. We obviously had Kerrigan there for 3 years while I was there. And just the kind of person he is, you know, and the kind of work ethic he has, it just makes everybody around him better. And he was just that kind of guy, and just a special talent, special motor. I mean, just incredible to be around. And then we had KK Quan Short, who is now with the Panthers. I mean, has had an incredible run in the NFL. Just those two guys alone, and then you just throw Mike Neal on top of there. Yeah. And you know, tons of other great athletes as well. I mean, it was a full room, that's for sure.
And we're talking, I mean, you said like 2009, 2010, these guys are still going in the NFL and strong. You know what I mean? It's it's unheard of for a lot of people. And there's plenty of people from Purdue that had that background or longevity, I guess you could say. So you mentioned that, obviously being around those guys, and here was my theory. I remember my family and friends always used to ask me like what it took for somebody to be like, to separate themselves like a Kerrigan or KK or something like that. So there were guys that their talent alone got them to that room, right? So they had their scholarship offer. They're there in that defensive line room. But those people that have both the talent and that end of that motor, that work ethic, those are the guys that separate themselves and really are the elite. Talk a little bit about that. Like I know you mentioned it, but just what separated those kind of guys.
It's just interesting. I mean, sometimes you can almost even see it just click for somebody, you know, where that comes together, where that talent and then that work and that finally just getting it comes together. Right. I think KK probably fit that mold. I mean, he was his freshman year, he came in with all that talent and a ton of, you know, but he had to get in shape. He had to get, you know, and kind of get to that point where it could click together and he could make those meaningful contributions. But and then other players, you know, somebody like Ryan, he just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds, and he just keeps adding on tools, like keeps adding on moves. I mean, I remember just the technical aspects of the game he kind of had picked up over the years and just absorbed. I mean, just listen to him talk, you know, pass rushing moves was just kind of on a different level than a lot of us were thinking at the time, you know. And so that was a ton of fun. But you know, those guys, they're just, they have that innate ability, but a lot of it comes from how willing they were to work and, you know, to take that ability and take it to the next level.
No doubt. Amazing. There's one thing that pops out with me. Number one, with Kerrigan, if for people that don't know, Brad and I crossed paths when I was a grad assistant coach at Purdue when he was a player. So we're kind of in the same world in different roles. But I remember, so I was a grad assistant on offense, and basically the first offense couldn't go against the first defense unless Kerrigan was out, you know what I mean? So if we wanted to and I coached the tight ends. So we're going up head to head with Gabe Holmes and Crosby Wright and Sims and all them. And we couldn't get reps off, especially we had some young guys at a point at tight end, but we couldn't get productive reps on offense if Kerrigan was in there with the first team. So I know they switched that off and had him go at second team and things like that. And then there's one point he was injured for a little bit. I don't know when it was, but he was over with in the sled, like the 5-man sled, and we're doing reps, you know, the whistle's going off, regular practice going off, and all you hear is just explosions on the sled. Boom, boom, and you look over and it's freaking Kerrigan, man, looking like Superman, like his nickname. Just the unreal motor and work ethic and just strength altogether. Craziness.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, we used to always do, obviously, the one-on-one pass pro drills with the offensive line, and every time, like, the scouts would be there, you know, they wouldn't stand there right there and watch him, not me, watch him, you know, do his reps. They'd be kind of across the practice, like, you know, acting like they weren't paying attention, but you'd always see him, you know, watch whenever it was his turn. And just guy like that, he would never lose a rep, you know, in practice. Like, he was never taking a play off all practice long. He was never going to let somebody beat him that, you know, he knew that he could beat. And so, I mean, he just rarely lost in those kind of situations. And I think that kind of mentality and attitude helps drive him to the next level as well.
No doubt. Well, like you said, I mean, some of the things that just generally rub off on you when you're in a room like that or around people like that, and you don't realize it until you hit real life, right? So you're out there, and for me, like I'm in a career in HR now, right? So I coached for a while, and it's just such a hostile environment. I mean, there's testosterone flying everywhere, and stuff's nerve wracking. So now I'm in the professional world, and things go wrong where certain people in the office, it's like, it's crazy and they can't handle it. But for me, it's like, this is nothing, as far as what's going on. And football, that was obviously probably the most important thing that football gave me, was just the thick skin and being able to battle through some things. So you want to build on that and kind of what you built on from that experience.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it comes down to just the hard work and that it takes to compete at a level like that is, you just get used to it, and you're, know that that's the kind of thing that builds on success. Just things like, being willing to prepare for your opponent, and you think about that and you think it's a very like football specific thing, but then, just in a pizza restaurant, like we got to prepare for the day the same way, we got to be ready to go when those customers come in. And like, that's kind of just a mentality that, we try to bring too. And I think a lot of it too is just little things like time management skills, learning how to work a schedule and fit a lot of different moving pieces into it. The teamwork aspect of it, and just, interpersonal, getting to be around a lot of different people that, come from different backgrounds. And for me, was extremely important. So there are just so many benefits to it. And I think that it had a huge impact, on my career now, for sure.
Sure. That's great. Well, moving into that transition, getting into the big time, and I'm excited to hear kind of, because I don't know the details. So tell me a little bit. So you were it was hospitality tourism management, right? HTM. Was that Cranard or no?
That wasn't Cranard. No. Okay. So it was in health and human sciences. And it was kind of one of those majors that I just had always had an interest in food. My dad was an engineer. My older brother was an engineer. My mom was a computer science person. So it's not like, this was in our family or in any way, but I loved to cook. I loved being around restaurants. I loved, being around food. And I found out about this major, and it just felt like the right fit for me going into college. And so I started that as a freshman. And then it was about junior year, I think. So I was living with Crosby Wright. You mentioned him earlier. And he was in Cranard. So he was in business school or management school. And then he was also in entrepreneurship. And they had a certificate program, which is something that's unique at Purdue, or at least it was at the time. So what it was a certificate program. So it was open to all majors. So instead of it being a part of the business school where it's only really business students making it into that, there were students from all majors. And so it was a really fun mix. And so he got me involved in that. I started taking those classes my junior year. And I had a professor, his name's Mike Cassidy there. And he talked about being different in what matters. That's like his thing about entrepreneurship. You got to find a way to be different in what matters. And that really struck me because, I'm thinking about restaurants all the time. So I'm like, it's so hard to be really unique and different in a restaurant setting whenever, there's like, when I came back here to Evansville to start a pizza restaurant, there are 120 other pizza restaurants already in Evansville. Wow. So how do you set yourself apart and be really unique and different in ways, not just to be unique and different, but they've got to be in ways that matter to your customers. And so that really struck me. And at the time I was really getting into pizza. I was making pizzas out of my house at Purdue. I would actually have.
By the way, that was my first experience. Do you remember? I've been in your house.
Yep.
You've cooked pizza in the early stages. So I love being a part of that. And somehow I was there and tasted some.
I mean, we had a couple of those. We had, 15, 20 guys. I made a ton of pizza, and we everybody throwing $5, to cover ingredients, and it was a ton of fun. So that's really one of the things that really got me hooked on, okay, I want it to be pizza. I love doing this, and then trying to figure out how to be different in ways that matter to our customers. And so I thought about myself, like, how do I like to go out to eat? Where do we like to go? And at Purdue, Chipotle was one of those main places. I love the quality of the food. I hate onions. So I love not like watching what goes in my burrito, making sure there's no onions going in my burrito. And so I love that style of service, but at the time there was really nothing like that for pizza. And so that was kind of that spark of the idea. And, took it back to my entrepreneurship professor, Mike Cassidy there. And he was just so encouraging of it. And he encouraged me to enter it into the business plan competition. And that's what I ended up doing.
That's great. So, I mean, was that a solo project? Do you have other group members, or how did that break down?
Yeah, so I ended up doing it as a solo, kind of a flying solo in there. And, looking back, I didn't know any different. And I just thought, this is kind of my idea. So I'm going to go for it and see what happens. Right. Typical college student fashion, I forgot to turn it in until the very last minute. Got a reminder email the night before, hey, you need to turn this in, the first kind of stage of the project. Sure. So luckily was able to procrastinate some and get that on through the next round. But then ended up, putting a lot of effort into it, made it to the finals, and, against a bunch of other really just unique ideas. And so it's just such a cool thing. And I think one of the things I said at the time was like, it's just something so simple. Like it takes 10 seconds to explain it. It's basically, personal sized pizza made right in front of you, baked in 2.5 minutes. I mean, to be able to really boil something down, your idea to this, just really the core elements, and be able to explain that to somebody really quickly, I think was a big benefit for me. And
no doubt. And correct me if I'm wrong. And I remember some of this because I was there when this all happened, but everybody else in the contest, there was these like advanced ideas, right? We're talking about Purdue, the research university, and everything's so advanced. And here you come with this simple idea boiled down, like you said, and that was the one that got it,
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for, keep it simple, stupid. Like you don't have to overthink everything, but being, unique and different in those couple ways that can really set you apart. So I think that's what we've been able to do.
That's great. Okay, so you win that contest competition, get a nice chunk of money, I guess, with that. Give me what's the roadmap? How do you go from a business project, a class project, or whatever you want to call it, to literally opening up a store in your hometown? How does that all come together?
It's a lot of steps. I mean, it is like it's one of those things that you just kind of have to break it down into piece by piece, like what do you got to do next? What do you got to do next? And just work towards those smaller goals. Because if you look at it as a whole, it's just so overwhelming. So a couple of the things I think that went my way whenever we were deciding to do this, that really helped me get it off the ground. One, I turned down a different job offer, to work for another restaurant group to do this. And so I was all in on that idea from the very beginning. I mean, don't get me wrong. I came back to Evansville and I, took a job in a restaurant, but it wasn't like I'm like starting this career and I'm going to still work on this idea I have, but like, it's kind of going to be on the back burner. Like I'm, made sure that I burned that bridge with the other restaurant company and said, I'm going to go do my own thing. Like I'm going to do it. And
I'm sorry. Well, I'm just curious because this is a huge piece too for those that are starting things up and kind of taking that leap. What about like what your family say? You know what I mean? Your parents like, hey, you got through school, you got your degree, and now I want to start from scratch and go from zero.
Yeah, it's interesting because my family's not entrepreneurial or wasn't before all of this. I mean, my dad worked at Mead Johnson here in Evansville for 35 years. Wow. And my mom is, the most conservative, frugal person you'll ever meet. And so, this was not something that came real naturally to them. But I'm so fortunate and just very blessed to come from a family that could support me and help me, go for a dream like this. And so that's just a huge blessing that I have, and very, very fortunate. But we also, at the same time, we knew, okay, like if Azzip went under, like, I personally, I'm going to be okay, but like, it's going to, my parents are signing on the line with me. So like, it's going to take a hit to their, retirement savings and things like that. Like it was not without its risk. And so that's one of the things that we were able to do is start it really small. The first store was started on a shoestring budget. I was in there doing construction work illegally. I was tearing down walls. I was doing everything I could to help save money. And so we really started on a shoestring budget and just really, wanted to test the concept in a small way, like now, we go into a new location and it might be 2,500 square feet. We have 2 ovens, we've got, all the things that, we've built up to over time. But when we first started, it was like, okay, how can we start this? We've got 1 oven, we're in, 1,400 square feet. Like, let's just test the concept and see if it works.
Sure. Was there anything specific as far as the technology or oven or something that was specific to you guys?
There was a few new pieces of equipment that were just kind of coming onto the market that were, they were considered ventless ovens. So they didn't have to have a Type 1 hood over to cook pizza, which Type 1 has the Ansel system and has all the exhaust venting outside and all this stuff. So ours didn't technically have to have that. And so that helped us, especially from the beginning. Plus some of this impinger technology where it's blowing air from the top and bottom.
Wow.
Has really sped up how quickly you can cook a pizza in just a conveyor style oven.
Right.
And so we just basically, bought the oven that we thought we'd need and just cranked it up as hot as we could get it. And, just figured out how to make the recipe work from there.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what would be, I guess, what was your first hire? So here's what I want to get to, like your skill set, your strength, and then where you supplemented, I guess, in your planning. I mean, your first hire or how you built your small team originally.
Yeah. So I am 100% I'm a big picture guy. I'm a dreamer. I'm I like to chase after that idea I have.
Right.
And so that is 100% my personality, but I'm not always one that is great at, completing that really, mundane task over and over and over again,
Right. I think we're looking in the mirror, man.
Yeah,
that's me, for sure.
Yeah. So that's my skill set. And so I was really trying to surround myself with other people that are like that. But then my first hire was the chef, who is very, very much like me. So I think that first hire was like both of us. Then once we came together, I wouldn't even say hire because he's a part owner in Azzip, but Blake Kelker was the first one that kind of joined me on this. And so it was like the two of us were just like, we'd just get after things and we'd like, chase that high of going after and completing some tasks and, having fun and being creative and doing all those things. I mean, that was just right up my alley.
That's awesome.
But then later, as we've grown, we've had to add a lot of pizza. I mean, like the whole rest of my family is like completely different from me. They're the structure. They're the ones that'll complete the task every time. Right. And so both my brothers now work for Azzip and mom and dad work for Azzip. So we've got a lot of that structure built in now.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What, because my interest is in the marketing world, marketing side of things and how you grow that brand, which I think Azzip's just an awesome brand. Where, I guess, who takes that over, or, how do you put together a plan for that? Like you said, you started small. So is it more kind of small thought as far as word of mouth, good pizza, good experience, or what was, I guess, the strategy behind all that?
Yeah, I think just overall first in the name. I mean, the name can be so important, and what we wanted to do with Azzip was I wanted to come up with a word that was like something that we could assign value to, right? Like I wanted something that meant nothing to anyone. And I think Azzip is definitely that. So Azzip is pizza spelled backwards. I didn't want it to be, Brad's Pizzeria or, some Italian word, I mean, it's just like, I just wanted something we could put value to. And so I was in the car one day with mom and we were talking through different names, kicking different things around. I was telling her that kind of stuff. And she said, what about pizza spelled backwards? And as soon as I heard Azzip, it just stuck like that. That's it. That's the name. And so I just really love how we've been able to make a word that meant nothing, have a lot of value to people now and mean something to people. And so that's been really cool. And so as we've grown, I've taken on a lot of the marketing responsibilities because I enjoy that. I kind of created the first little proof for the first Azzip logo, with the word forward and backwards. And so I've really done a lot of that throughout my time with Azzip of trying to kind of push the brand and be creative and keep trying to make it mean something to people.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so now it's time to scale, right? So you're
Mhm.
going did you have is it 3 locations in Evansville?
So we have,
For those
we have
first
3 in
3?
Evansville and then 1 in Newburgh, which is just outside. So the Newburgh one was actually the second one.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
just like classic me too, I opened the first one and things are going well for the first, 3 months. And we signed a lease for a second one almost immediately. I mean, just no
Wow.
forethought put into it. No, hey, let's try this for a year, make sure it's still
Right.
working. Like, nope, let's sign a lease for another one and we'll go see how that works. And so, doing that so quickly, though, I mean, there are a lot of benefits to it. I mean, we very quickly had to learn, okay, how do we train a manager?
Right.
Before I was there all the time. And so how do we train a manager and how do we, hire people when we're not there all the time? How do we get processes in place to train new employees? How do we, all those things. I mean, that first restaurant, it was just like, we were all just thrown into the fire and you just got to figure it out. And
Yeah.
so, okay, the second one, the third one, you got to start putting some processes and some things in place so that this thing can be sustainable. So that very quickly we had the second one. We opened the first one in February, and the second was opened by September. And so
Wow.
it was just an incredible whirlwind of a first year. I got married that year. We bought our first house that year. My wife graduated grad school that year. I mean, we just had a whirlwind.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
When was, or if, I don't know if there is, but those procedures where you've created the machine where now you open the doors and this is what you have to do to get a place up and running.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, is it in place, I guess? And when did you come together with that?
It's been a process over time. I mean, I wouldn't say we've got this ironclad perfect system for doing this yet. We're getting closer and closer, but it is a process. I mean, you get one piece in place, and then you got to put your eyes on the next one. Like, what's the next thing that's going to help us be stable, be a business that can continue to grow, and just try to put those pieces in place one at a time, and just kind of be patient and know that you can't do everything right at the very beginning. You gotta take your time and kind of do those one at a time.
Very cool. The one thing I caught of one of your videos, so I'm obviously in the HR side of things with the human piece.
Yep.
And one thing you said on your video is the employee experience is the customer experience. I thought that was really cool. Explain that a little bit what that means.
Yeah, I mean, we're only as good as our worst employee.
Right.
Just same as a football team in a lot of ways. But whenever our customers come into the Azzip, like their experience of what Azzip is 100% influenced by what that employee's attitude is like for their visit. And so if we do an all employee survey twice a year. So we kind of gauge, what the environment, what the culture in each store is like. And we are able to tell those surveys directly correlate with the customer service responses that we get for those stores. Wow. So the better the employee survey is about how they feel like the culture and environment is in the store, how well, they feel like their team's working together, all those things directly correlate with what that guest sees as the customer service as well. So a team that's engaged and having fun while they go to work, that stuff shows through to the customers. And so we want to have a great employee experience. So we do things like we start at $11 an hour is our starting wage for all team members. Every new hire gets a new hire kit where they get their shirts, but then some coupons to give out to family and friends, some stickers, some, an Azzip cup, and just fun stuff to be able to have. And we try to do like little things like that to really welcome them to the team and show them that they're valued here and we want them to be here. And so there's a lot of things like that we try to do to make it a great employee experience, because we know it starts there. If they're on the same page with the rest of their team, if they're in there having fun and they're enjoying what they're doing, that genuine enjoyment of their job shows through to the customer. And so we're able to then capitalize on that.
What a huge indicator. And for an organization and a leader to understand that from the get-go, it's so important. That's huge.
Yeah. I mean, and this comes from both of my brothers, bring so much of this too.
Sure.
It's definitely not all me. We've had our bumps along the road and, learning experiences. And really it takes some time to figure out, okay, what type of employee do you really want in your business? And, is it just a hard worker? Is that the only thing that's going to be, what you're going to be looking for? For us, industry experience really isn't that necessary. We can train them how to make a pizza, but that attitude and coming in and, putting the guests first, that's the kind of stuff that you can't train. And so those are the qualities that we're looking for in our employees.
Great. Okay, you mentioned adversity. I want to finish, I guess, with this. Give me some adversity, or what's the, you're in that big operation phase. Mm-hmm. Where was there a point where you said, we're in a little bit of trouble here, or kind of what was a big piece of that?
So one of the biggest times of adversity we faced was, we went through some adversity trying to find the first location, and, we had some bumps along the road. It took us almost 2 years after school to actually get that first location open. Wow. So there were some bumps along the road there, but I think the one that I'll point to is we were about a year and a half or 2 years in when we opened the Champaign, Illinois location. Right. So we had two locations here in town, and we were opening a third. And we just kept hearing from everybody, College Town. You got to do College Town. This is perfect for on campus. And so we wanted to do either Lafayette or Champaign or Bloomington. And so we looked at all the locations and ended up finding a spot on campus at U of I in Champaign. And that store was just a struggle. I mean, we had struggled with some finding the right management team for it up there. We just never clicked there with the students. One, we didn't want to stay open late, which I know kind of goes against what college students like, but we didn't want to be the place open till 3 a.m. Kids come in sloppy drunk, and it's just not an environment that we'd want to work in. So we didn't want to put our teams through that. And so, so we kind of felt our way through that one and really struggled there. And that was probably the biggest point of contention with some of our ownership and my brothers and mom and dad, and it was what do we do about this store? And at the time we decided to end up cutting bait. We were about 2 years into that, but it felt like just an anchor on us. It was like one that wasn't working. Things weren't going well. We felt like couldn't find the right leader for the store, and so we decided to make the really hard decision, like, let's just close this store. Like, let's focus on the stores that are doing well for us, and try to move forward from there. And we learned a ton from that experience, just about, how important getting a culture of the store off on the right foot from the beginning, because once it's established, it's so hard to change it. And you just, trying to make those initial hires the right kind of people from the get-go is so important. And so that's something we really focus on now, trying to find those right people, find those right leaders for our stores, because that is such a important thing for any business or any team or anybody, is what that culture and that environment in the store is like.
Yeah. And such an important lesson too, on like when to decide to punt, I guess, if you will, when to punt and move on to your strengths and focus on where your strengths are. And I think that's huge, that a lot of people struggle with, and to prove that it's going to be a success or something like that, and dig themselves a deeper hole.
Yeah, it was a tough decision, and we went back and forth on it for months and months, and it's not something that's fun to do. But at the end of the day, we had to do what was best for, Azzip long-term going forward. And I think we were able to do that and take a lot of lessons from it. I mean, it wasn't a total waste. We took a ton of lessons from it. That's for sure.
Huge.
Yeah.
So 10 locations. All right. Yep. So here we are, 10 locations. Finally, well, you're in Indy. When did that open up in Indy, or Greenwood, right?
Yep. It's kind of technically on the south side of Indy, just on the north side of the county line road there. And it opened in June. So we were planning to open in March. And then, as you may know, we are now facing a global pandemic that really threw a wrench in our plans.
Crazy.
And so there was just, there's been so many changes since COVID hit. But we ended up opening in June, and it's off to a great start. We've got a ton of awesome customers there already. It was great because we were already in Lafayette, Bloomington, and Terre Haute. So we kind of had Indy surrounded with a lot of the college towns. And so, we had a ton of people traveling from Indy to those locations. We had people from Evansville who have family, friends in Indy. And I think there's just a lot of connection. And just the whole, Purdue, Indiana, Evansville thing means a little more in Indianapolis than it would in another big city. So we felt comfortable going there, doing our first major market in Indianapolis. And we've been really excited about the response. I mean, people have been really loving it. So it's been awesome.
That's great. I'm happy for you. What, next step, vision, you mentioned long-term. So I'm kind of curious on what you see or what are the next steps for Azzip?
When I think about companies that I really respect and want to emulate, I think about companies like an In-N-Out out in California, right? They're all company owned. They've grown, over years and years of just doing one at a time. They're, throughout California and are very regional based. And I love that kind of thing. I mean, I think if Azzip could be a, really just Midwestern kind of company that people knew when they came to Indiana or Kentucky, they could get Azzip. I think that'd be a really cool thing. And so that's kind of the plan, is just focus on, we're lucky here in Evansville. We've got Indianapolis, Nashville, Louisville, and St. Louis all within about a 3-hour drive. So we've got a lot of great opportunities to grow right here in our backyard. And so that's kind of the plan.
That's awesome, man. Mm-hmm. Listen, I respect your story so much. I respect your background, the grind to where you are. I'm really happy for you. I'm rooting for you all the way. I hope you know that. I think you know that. So I really appreciate the time, and I wish you the best. And hopefully we can connect some more, man. I'll definitely be down in Greenwood checking out the A's. I've been to Lafayette. That's the only spot I've been to so far. So.
Well, great. Yeah, I loved catching up. It was great talking to you. And this was fun. I really enjoyed it. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Anytime, Brad. Thanks a lot, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Episode's over. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Listen, if you're still around and supporting us, man, I really appreciate it. It'd be great. Just hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and keep this thing going. A lot of things going on with Platform Sports League. Most immediate right now, January 15th kicks off our CEPSL, Collectively Evolving Platform Sports League, High School Winter League. Okay, 7-on-7 football. We are forming teams from all around the Indianapolis and even, northern Indiana, southern Indiana, to come join us downtown. Actually, not downtown, a little bit north at Sports Zone Indy, here in Indianapolis, for a 4-week 7-on-7 league. We got media coverage. We got stat leaders, standings, players of the week, highlights, player interviews. If you're interested, or you know a team that's interested in forming and getting together and competing with the best, Indy's finest around the area, please reach out and let me know somehow, one way or another, you could find me. I appreciate you guys tuning in again, and let's keep this thing going. Thanks a lot. You guys have a good one.